Hey guys, in this video I build a pair of C-47 Skytrains, or Douglas Dakotas as the Brits knew them. Before we get into the build, let's take a look at the real aircraft.
Well, here we have the C-47 Skytrain hanging from the ceiling of the 8th Air Force hangar in Duxford. Hanging from the ceiling like this means that we get a really good look of the underside of the aircraft. And earlier this year at the Royal International Air Tattoo, we had a Dakota in RAF markings on the ground so we can have a look at it up close. This is me starting the build of the first aircraft.
This is the C-47 kit then, and as you can see the plastic itself is khaki, and I'm going to be having the doors closed on this one. So we're not going to do too much to the interior. That's pretty much done and ready to close the halves together. By contrast, the Dakota kit, which incidentally is going to become the C-47 Skytrain, which will have all the doors open, comes with a much better interior, and we'll be able to show that off and work on a bit more detail. And just like that, we have something that looks like a Dakota. First step of weathering the interior of the other one is a nice wash, and we have used Black Knight from Ammo.
To seal up the two fuselage halves, I needed a lot of clamps, and you can see I've focused on that lower section. There you go, just to avoid a seam line there. I think I managed to get away with it. Then was able to put the lower wings on, and you can see the huge gaping hole, which I fill up with card later on, where the open flaps are. So beware of that. You can see here I'm using an elastic band because there's a huge gap where I'm about to put some cement. There you go. And yeah, needed the elastic band to hold that together, but it did the job. And you can see on the elevators there, we've got some masking tape holding them straight. Before we get some more paint on, we need to mask up the windows. So I'm using some tape here, roughly measuring the length of those windows, and we'll use the straight part of the tape to align with the top part of the windows. And this is quite a delicate procedure, as you can see here, but once you've got it right, the rest is nice and straightforward. But yeah, you can see I'm just using the top of the tape and the top of the windows to align there, and you can see the windows coming through, and that then gives you your reference point to cut the masking tape with a very sharp scalpel. And that's what we're going to do after we have used a cocktail stick to get those windows nicely covered and masked with the tape. Then we get our sharp scalpel and we cut along those lines, which we can very much see. You can actually feel the blade between the gap. My concern, if anything, was that I was going to push the see-through plastic through with the scalpel, but thankfully it was all fine. And here you can see me taking the masking tape away, leaving the windows nicely masked. And then we're ready for the primer. So, as per usual really, I black based both aircraft, and you'll notice I'm focusing on the spine because I want to see if I need to do any more sanding. There's a lot of ridges on this one, which is great for detail, but you want to make sure that your seam lines are not there. There you have it then. There's two black-based primed Dakotas. For the invasion stripes then, I used this tape here, and we've used a small piece to mark out where the white line will be. And then obviously we want to mask up the black areas with the tape. And we're using that first piece as our reference point so that we can align those like so. Obviously the invasion stripes were applied in real life out on the field by hand. So I'm using my fingernail here just to elongate those lines that little bit. I don't want perfection, but I don't want to overdo it either. Here we've got the white primer down, and that gives us our invasion stripes, but it also enables us to bring out some modeling of the panels. Then we can mask up the white areas, and we are ready to get some paint now onto these two. So obviously I'm using two different schemes, but we've used a grey, which I'll show you in a second, for both undersides. There you go, it's the neutral grey. And I'm using the World War II colours USAF set from Ammo MiG, and it tells you all of the colours that we need. I'm using a dark green, which again I'll show you the exact one I use in a moment, for the RAF Dakota. And initially we're just doing a very light coat. There you go, dark green from Ammo MiG. And then I was able to go over those areas in a bit more detail to really make that pop. Then we used some putty from AK, voila, to mask up the areas underneath. And now we're turning our attention to the C-47 Skytrain. And what we want to do, these areas that I've painted green, I want to get these little wormy, sluggy things just to mask off those areas. And we just want to create a rough, squiggly line, nothing too precise about this. Just using my thumb there to create those curves. And yeah, once you're done, you end up with something that sticks very nicely to your cutting mat. But this is now ready for the final khaki. And you can see there's the one we're using, again from the USAF set. And again, this was two coats. We did a very light coat initially, and then a bit more of a precise second coat. And now we're ready for the fun bit. We get to remove a lot of these masks. Now, this is only the fun bit if everything goes according to plan. If you find that you've got some errors, then you know that you've got to correct those. But it's now decal time. And I'm using hot water. We're using micro set and micro sol. We've got tweezers, paintbrush, cotton buds, and obviously scissors, and a hairdryer. So first step then is to get the decal submerged in the hot water. That's going to really soften the decal, and then we can apply our micro sets to the area that we're going to attach the decal to. And you'll notice I've removed it from the backing so that we've not got excess water that will then wash away the micro set. And then we're using the Q-tip to squeeze out all of the air and all of the liquid so that that conforms nicely to the contours of the model. And you would say that that's pretty much done. But what we're going to do now is get the hairdryer to effectively melt the decal, but making sure we don't melt the plastic. So be careful with that. And then the final stage is micro sol to really soften that and make sure that it's perfectly adhered to the model. And then obviously we can get our varnish on. Before we do that, however, we're using Black Knight panel line wash again from Ammo, and with this one I just gave them a complete all over wash and then quickly removed that. Now you've got to be careful, because when you're using acrylic paint and an enamel wash, you are effectively using paint stripper. So I was careful here to not overdo it, and I got away with it on the C47. The Dakota I had to do a second coat. What we're doing here is we are using the matte varnish just to seal all of that, and now we're masking up the flap areas, and you can see I've placed a piece of card in that massive cavernous gap. And then the interior green that we used earlier, we're just spraying those interior areas. And before you know it, you have two rather fabulous looking Dakotas. Now I think I'm going to shut up now and let you enjoy these beauty shots. And yeah, all I'll say is I hope you've enjoyed this. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do think about subscribing, and yeah, catch you on the next one, guys.